the, 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 the.
THEA.
The dominance of Android has led to what I call...
Look me in the eye and tell me, cigarette song, opera heist, glass of scotch. What y'all gonna do? Y'all gonna... We be. And that's the only thing he did. It's all the music you need, folks.
How'd you get the nickname Motherfucker?
And the standard parts of the... Got enough demons right here, playing music all the time. Put your fucking foot on the gas and drive the goddamn car.
B, 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 B.
I thought it would be interesting.
Which is that this kind of surveillance can be used most effectively.
It's difficult and it can be dangerous.
I could be working with my brother right now.
Should we be doing that? Should we be
But future civil rights movements may be crushed
covering these things?
against women and other people who can be shamed in our society.
Work can be spiritually rewarding, but it's
Or more likely to be profiled.
And, 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 and.
Well, they offered me the part and I'm taking.
And the standard parts of the...
on our planet today, and it has to stop.
You can't even take a shit and wipe your own ass. Despise the city, not despise you.
Are the rich and powerful.
Put your fucking foot on the gas and drive the goddamn car.
I'll cut you over and gut you like a fish.
Of, 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 of.
You know, we work in a museum of natural history.
We're going to exploit this multiple bounces of light. But of course, our eye sees an integral composite. But of course, because of tissue and blood...
What the fuck is inside of you? It's fucking crawling inside of me. It's inside of me.
I call it.
So instead of must love dogs, must love
Must love, right, exactly.
And because of the packet of the photons...
It's fucking inside of me.
A, 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 A,
A.
So putting a sticker or actually like Band-Aids.
He's got a drywall business in Compton. Absolutely, but not before a job.
I can take care of myself.
You never been a wheelman? You never had a lucky song?
I'll cut you over and gut you like a fish.
We must remember that surveillance is a tool.
The Cap is a better player.
I'm giving you a way out. Big difference.
You don't need a score for a score.
$600 on a phone.
Well, I'll get myself a lawyer.
In, 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 in.
Dressed in a long, fitted blue dress that emphasized her curves. It was also an opportunity for my siblings to dress up in our latest gear. It is almost a taboo in the art world to show Africans in a modern framework, truly, profoundly in charge of telling African stories. It measures roughly 27 feet width. They will in turn propagate and perpetuate.
I was about to say in the UK, but in England, they took the whole team away, even in match season.
Later, when I was in boarding school, never before seen in Africa, by 6.5 feet height.
Two, 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 two.
I've seen all manner of shit done to niggas. Take my kids to school every morning.
And is equally able to protect themselves from surveillance by the state.
We're going to make...
Yes, you are.
Call or a Skype call.
They want to get in there and turn them into Christians.
It's supposed to be there when people in you
are using devices that leave them completely vulnerable to surveillance.
belt out show tunes on the way to the job.
Even if you think you have nothing to hide, at the
have,
hovel,
haven,
didn't have the Andes as our site.
We talk about, oh, now I have my viewpoint, you have your viewpoint.
You have to treasure and share every single one of those pieces. We have to rely on sophisticated computer simulations.
You have not worn that t-shirt since you were 15.
This idea that the temple could have reached.
All of which have histories of their own.
You have a pleasant evening.
Have in older times.
They would have been taken away and killed. Or because over years they have been socialized to see cooking as their role.
I found a higher calling.
IT, 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 IT.
Everybody to sort of like get going. So it was very creatively energizing.
This is where it becomes interesting because
a lot of it was coming out as I was writing. I did a lot of outlining a goal or a date. I'm gonna do it, you know? And what's interesting is that I find now, and I'm like, yeah, I couldn't have written that. Like, how did I myself write that? It was.
Does it say Michelle Obama under the picture? It worked too.
To a few people. I gave it to, of course, like my writing partner, Will, for his notes. But I'm feeling, you know, on solid ground.
And is it, you said heavy on dialogue?
Yeah. So I'm harried, like, you know, a couple weekends in a row. But yeah, it was great. And
coming up with a lot of this rich dialogue?
You know, some of it, but I found.
And it worked.
I.
Or always ask the question to themselves, what need am I filling in the marketplace?
I barely sleep, I'm waking up, I can't wait until we get to the time of the.
And you say, oh, that wasn't my intention, I meant that he was being defensive. Blanche saying, well, I really have been working as a prostitute, and.
But I think Jon Snow dies. My instinct is that he dies. I don't know.
We have students that come in. What was it?
Almost like the work that's not that is not legitimate, which I think is ridiculous.
Well, how can I, how can I tick off as many boxes to make sure this?
I think because half the stuff on my reel is corporate.
But you lose context so that we're not walking around going, why am I doing all this? You see
that. Fatted.
That's.
These cultures that once danced.
I know that he's based on someone in Mart's life.
Which is that this kind of surveillance can be used most effectively.
See, we're all held accountable, Clyde. That includes you. I am that one nigga in 10,000.
We know how that turns out.
Are using devices that leave them completely vulnerable to surveillance.
You see that ethnobotanists have friends in all sorts of strange cultures.
Said he'd give me that brand new Dodge Ram Charger. I guess there was somebody else out there that we can't retract the decisions that we've made. Every single word that came out of Calvin Candy's mouth.
4.
To provide housing for free to those in disaster.
Of their own stuff, but it's like, but their mentality about always going for like the more ambitious project.
They're confident in the stable supply of that crop for the long term.
For like the next movies.
To ensure that people can provide housing for free for refugees. Now, these numbers for banks may not seem very big.
For me, plot arises out of characters in a space doing something. And that creates the plot.
And it's successful for Standard Bank.
If it wasn't for all those shorts that I was making.
So one of the best ways for businesses to help ensure their own growth
Too challenging for them to approach in a short schedule or like no money or something. But like I don't know. I've always
has its own reason and function for being.
You.
So when you picture Google for Michelle Obama in 2009, that.
But I'm feeling, on solid ground.
And is it, you said heavy on dialogue?
Yeah. So a theater exercise in terms of, the prep than anything.
I think you.
And you will hear something strange.
If you picture Google for him the weeks after the July 22nd events from Sweden, you got those two and you get a search result like this, almost. Thank you for your time. So I'm asking you to remember that behind every algorithm, it works really well, as you can see.
I'm in my office on my computer.
So knowing you had the day job, and so now you knew, so you're writing these different dialogue scenes, when you're driving...
You need to understand that you are human and...
He.
Who he was.
Taken of him because he was very ill here.
And is he telling us to just go and find cruel women?
How he would react.
He looked me in the face and he said,
he was my age, he was 52.
As we forget how pitiless he is.
This guy decided he would go down to the Amazon and give it a whirl. The shaman looked at him, he said, you know what?
Wore them until the day he died.
I said, I have a feature. And he said, okay, let's do it. And he gave so much of just...
With.
Being alone versus being with his family.
But when you're with your kids all day, you become emotionally tired.
There, Miyagi bid farewell to his dying father, smoothed things over with Sato, and rekindled
for an hour with your mom about God knows what.
Made friends with the apartment building's quirky caretaker, a middle-aged Mr. Miyagi.
What's the last final scene of Don Draper and Mad Men episode? He's a seducer of women, untroubled with his relationship with women, and he's...
While visiting Okinawa, Daniel had a summer fling with Yukie's niece, Kumiko, and entered...
This is not because I have any special...
Parenting has a lot more to do with landscaping.
Think about your significant other for...
On.
access to be briefed on these things.
Get your vision on screen.
To ask them to consider movement patterns on the field.
Asking for comment on the report.
It got a little hot in the plane.
Or on the internet.
As we study positions on the field.
Traitor hero, I have a theory on this.
I saw you eat a rock on the way in.
Based on the principle.
Make sure the most of the conversation focuses on what you have in common.
Dough. 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 Dough.
As long as you're not hurting someone else, do that.
What are we going to do about that?
To not do too much research.
Yeah, I find that interesting because it's sometimes
they're friends and what have you. So if I did do too much investigating.
Their practice because they have to see so many children. And we want to do that.
Wow, wishes do come true.
You don't have to do that for very long.
Nor would it be wise to do so, and here's why.
We recognize the child as having autism.
To do with action. I just do not know what I'm going to do once he's gone.
How can we do that? Well,
say, 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 say.
Which is to say that I loved writing.
I would say that, First, what does it say in the caption? What does it say under the picture on each web?
There was one occasion where I had to kind of, as the director, say, I had to pull.
And I know it's fashionable to say the Proust.
And 90% of the time they'll reach out and say, yeah, I'm totally willing to help. And I will say very upfront, it was so much easier to do than people think.
And I'd like to say that life was totally easy with them.
And validate their work. validate what we had done and say, yeah, it was great, or it was.
They'll play a festival or something, and then they'll meet an agent or a producer, and the agent will say, well,
pull someone aside and say, listen, this behavior it didn't work. It's not.
Does it say Michelle Obama under the picture?
This. This. Thistle. Thistle.
But wait, this is actually my favorite project.
Well, I like this, Lily.
I started exploring this idea of,
Baby, how could you do this to me?
Just like yellow, this one.
And did you know they do this with needles?
where you would just turn this knob.
But isn't it just the same as what, well, I've been doing this for so many years, I can go.
It's another material. And we want to make this material accessible to.
But then he came in with this needle. Do you want to get this tattoo?
Add this buzzer.
They.
Around the world, and they visit places they've always wanted to visit. Before they miles away from us, they saw our plane go in. They were there in minutes. They took
What are they talking about?
kids to college. All the dreams they had, they gave them up when they were 20. Makes no difference. To know the human. If they respect you, because they had children. They retire and they're maybe dead in 5 to 9 years. They're going to drown or not, they didn't know anything. They just know that they have to. But they do. At a certain age, you think you've been forgotten.
Yeah, well, I guess they had a fight and he got.
Thought they were so smart and we were so stupid. About the human being, the person, the individual, who they really are behind. And I grew up with are dead. Or if they're not dead, they retired from jobs they.
At.
Five years ago, my son Gideon died at birth.
Through the pursuit of local or at very best national interests.
We could talk a lot about that, but I'm gonna leave it at that.
It was very painful at times and continues to be so.
Who had anything but the interests of Sonny Boy at heart.
That probably no one in the room keeps a wolf cub at home.
Yes, you're always going to have.
And we ignore it at our peril.
From an area of conflict to a country at peace.
The kids at my school opened it without my permission.
In her book, Woman at Point Zero,
that I will turn into what a shame conversations at the bus stop.
But.
Which protect data on its devices from everyone but the owner.
Feature film. Let's have some fun. And it's going to be a lot of hard work. But if it was nothing but house so doable. But again, going back to having a great, solid team, yeah, it worked.
Absolutely, but not before a job.
When cast see it because it was their sweat and blood that went into it. But then,
which is very nice, but not my point. Success catapults you just as abruptly, but just as far.
Very blunt. This is a first-time feature from a person who is never.
Google uses a lot of smartness to achieve this, but quite simply,
get locations. I'll feed you guys every day. But unfortunately, right now,
it's a 3-act structure to stories. All stories have a 3-act structure, but in the
we.
Talk given to us when we became old enough.
So we created the conceit that he'd been.
While ensuring that we never accepted the status quo as inevitable.
Then we asked hospitals and facilities to nominate nurses.
Because we had to shoot it chaotically.
And I refuse to accept that we can't build this world into something new when so many things tell us we are not. So when we say that Black Lives Matter, it's not because others don't.
We wanted to at least be able to pick off false stuff.
The idea that we aren't worthy of this world. It's simply because we must affirm that we are worthy of existing without fear so that we could be kids, not casket or concrete.
His. his, his, his.
Once Holmes comes in, dazzles everybody with his solution.
Rather than treating the kids in his clinic like patients.
Thinking very fondly of his miss, but he's looking for things that his wife is doing.
I run his crews too.
That Mark Zuckerberg from Facebook covers over his camera and his heart rate responded, right?
He told all of his readers the following.
In his private torture chamber.
His time is over.
What I've learned about Howard and his complexity.
His partner.
From, 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 from.
From.
What I'm getting from the question is kind of a larger.
Somebody who comes from the private sector.
Migrating from places to form families.
Is formal retirement from the workforce.
As we move from family trees.
Separately from their children.
You know, from any writing standpoint, that's what you're always aiming for. No one.
They obtained DNA from this person and found a perfect match. Both of them are descendants of a lady from Scotland.
And from most of their friends. They constitute experiments from which we ourselves.
Not. 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 Not.
Eyes do not tell us whether somebody's lying or not.
You're not my type.
All right, so not too close. But why am I not your type? What's wrong?
Our humanity is not defined by any skill. If we fail, it's not because our machines are too intelligent.
To deny who I am as a person and not be myself.
We should not worry about what our machines can do today. But the winners were not grandmasters. And then it was not considered much of a surprise.
No, I'm not your girlfriend.
She does not think I will be accepted.
Bye. 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 Bye.
Bye. And by doing this,
this is how you are finding.
This is affected massively by reverberation time.
We all get on planes now comforted by the idea.
It's sleep degraded by noise in cities. We can do better than that.
And by working together with a concerted mindset.
So do the errors in dispensing made by the staff in hospitals.
And was being represented by a lawyer.
How the director and the editor create suspense or tension by the way that the cuts are laid.
Either by pasting together the ends of the broken DNA.
We need to stop being comforted by them.
She, 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 she.
Here, did she accidentally brush up against a man there?
But I think she likes it.
She smiling too brightly, stressed and how great she is in bed.
She was so reliant on Howard that she demanded that.
From which she sent vile, hideous messages.
She comes marching up to me and she goes,
so even though she had a second job off, Tracy loved this company and she loved the people.
Barbra Streisand when she did Funny Girl.
And she was trying to frame.
Whenever she had to dance with a partner.
Or. Or. Or.
Not having to or wanting to learn quantum mechanics, so that it doesn't just move in one direction or the other.
There was no secrets. There was no like, oh, we're out of money or we have more.
I also think that in the coming decade or so,
say perfect search result, more or less. And they made sure to upload the picture as michelleobama.jpg or the like. So
DP was 2 or 3 years out of USC, you know, and really was ready for something.
You have to bring 10 or 20 or 100 facts to the table.
Over someone's eyes, or like being so like blunt and mean about it that people.
Which is now only in the last year or two. Or Canada, or Britain, or Germany.
At least have that full like 90, 100 pages or whatever done. And like projects.
As.
And because, as I say, we change partners every 5 minutes.
There you go. I can hear Facebook cheering as you.
Okay.
And he was teleprompter Trump last night as opposed to Twitter Trump.
No virtuous act is quite as virtuous from the standpoint of our friend or foe as from our own standpoint.
But as I watch the 2020 Olympics in Tokyo,
I've even written about this, published on this subject as well.
any more than not being lively is the same thing as being dead.
A mosquito's nervous system has almost as many sensory auditory cells as we do.
Sometimes known as life. That not getting ahead isn't the same thing as falling behind, and the inner health club known as the ping pong table.
What? 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 What?
What?
This is what you find. Rock.
What is driving him? What was he thinking?
But what do? We can't go the Tom Ripley route.
Told you what was gonna happen, didn't I? Fuck, what y'all gonna do? Y'all gonna...
The membrane between what is and what could be. So we know just what details to include.
Like, what were you...
I'll explain what I mean.
Well, then what can you know about healing?
She says he's not coming up.
Go. 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 Go.
Go.
But then a couple of years go by.
So I'd wake up, write, go to work, come home, eat, write.
But what do? We can't go the Tom Ripley route. Let's go to 221B Baker Street.
Well, 10 schools, 100 schools, the UN, the whole world.
Said, you didn't go to medical school, did you?
You're going to go back and clean that up manually.
However, if you go into most of the forests of the Amazon, there...
So where do we go from there?
It didn't really go very far.
And if you go to some place...
But if you have an infection, go to a doctor.
There. 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 There.
There.
Theirs.
They have been forced off their lands. This is their perception of why you shouldn't mess with uncontacted Indians.
That encrypt their calls, their text messages.
How ironic if these isolated Indians and their magic frog.
They'll probably have a cheap $20 Android phone in their pocket.
And their sacred frogs. Thanks. Their malokas, their longhouses were burned.
These individuals now increasingly have smartphones in their pockets. Make sure that you put a sticker on their camera and protect them.
And their executive team for 3 days visualized their entire practice.
Without them doing really anything to secure their information.
That their veterans return to work program
Can.
You can sort of buy 1999 spy on your ex-girlfriend software online.
We can only affect the decisions.
Because you can remove them and put them back on whenever you want to make a... If they can do it at all. The best thing that you can do for your privacy in terms...
And we can actually change students' mindsets.
That can take over your webcam, who can afford devices that secure their data by default. If the only people who can protect themselves...
That we can hope to have.
But not everyone can afford an iPhone.
Who? 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 Whoa!
That's a scientist who works in the rainforest.
Against those who have no power.
And look who it gathers. Than a man of genius who interests us.
You really get a very clear sense of who this man is, and who he was.
Very transparent, as honest as possible. And the people who are okay with that, emailed.
But those who were taught this lesson showed a sharp rebound in their grades.
And anyone else who wants to join us.
Students who were not taught this growth mindset.
These are the people who truly live. These are the people who know nature best.
Get. 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 Get.
and then get a permanent job afterward.
Into Brazil.
Of young workers who can't get through the day.
And to get to knowledge.
How'd you get the nickname motherfucker?
They get involved in different worlds than their worlds.
The Brazilians did not get a nickel.
Kept trying really hard to get published.
Yuck.
A lot of them, oh, we're going to get a feature done, this and that. And the fact that
To get out of the surveillance business.
We think about a little boy trying to get to sleep.
If.
So it's like, if they're really liking something.
What if there were a technology?
I'm writing a script and someone's not clear on like why my character is doing certain things.
And what if I didn't embrace the shake?
Or what happens if they fail, you know.
As if it's an actual place that exists.
If you haven't seen Tamara, spoiler. But I made her, you know, she was really powerful. And so I'm like, you know, if I stop her, it's either going to have...
I discovered that if I worked on a larger scale and with bigger materials...
Can you imagine if butterflies were yakking out there all over the place?
And I realized if I ever wanted my creativity back...
And then if we internalize it emotionally, if we sympathetically connect with it, and we allow...
Would. 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 Would.
Would be.
Would've.
How he would react. I would say that, you know...
As much as I would really like to some days.
Who would you rather be treated by?
I would do it in the morning as well as the night. I would wake up in the morning.
Freud would write about this later.
Sure. You know?
Do you think if it had been a short, it would have been different?
In one study, they told us they would probably cheat the next time.
Because they would have to kill your ass.
It's because it would provide evidence that I still lived.
It would be with how.
And we would expect a manufacturer of luxury goods to have products.
Her. 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 Her.
Who I used to be, thinking about her constantly.
And fleshing out her previous career and her life earlier. And
which was her first film.
He planted violets at her grave.
They paid for her to get her MBA at night. And the company not only made her a permanent offer, plus she really wanted to bring work back into her life.
Where people set out to insult her through her search results.
Why did I suddenly feel like I was her all over again?
And the fact that she shared her findings.
And it ended up being a win for both Tracy and her employer.
Take Tom Ripley, her most famous character.
All. 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 All.
And all of everything, we don't mean nothing.
I realized that all I had to do was...
One actually goes all the way back to the Big Bang. So...
It's all the music you need, folks.
Closely related are career transitioners of all kinds.
She had been drinking all night.
They're all locked out.
There's others that are all about the toaster, okay?
I got enough demons right here, playing music all the time. Robin, you all right?
You see that ethnobotanists have friends in all sorts of strange cultures.
You've seen all manner of shit done to niggas.
My. 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 My.
That's my, assessment. I don't know if that's 100% accurate, but from what I've seen, that's.
Is the ingredients in my kitchen?
When she finds out he's my roommate.
So 10 years ago, I asked my colleague, and I'll look in my kitchen.
Forgive my naivete, but why does Name Talent not want to do horror?
An algorithm every day to make a meal for my family.
Because in my decades of strategy consulting,
my Department of Education contact told me it was math.
Oh my God.
So I came up with my own way to count cells in the brain. Lows, which in my case is exactly right.
Make. 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 Make.
Maker.
Or perhaps if I copy it and make some art.
They don't make things fair.
They make some important products.
So I started taking film classes. I started studying film. I started making films, like on film.
Algorithms don't make things fair.
you can agitate it and make those nuclei.
The one who make those products we love, like coffee and chocolate.
That I'm going to make it all the way.
The fact that we must make progress.
And we can fix them. We can make them better.
Because the only way we're going to make substantial progress, they're beginning to make it happen.
About. 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 About.
And we think about Proust, we think
Well, then what can you know about healing?
somebody else would love about this woman.
But in talking about destruction,
Books that are all about how jealousy.
The second area of concern that employers have about relaunchers.
McIntyre wrote about this and it was read by the editor of High Times magazine.
Because let's think about what happens.
So they could feel really good about themselves.
He didn't know about it when I was writing it.
Lost on the Peru-Brazil border about 30 years ago.
So let's talk about equality.
No. 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 Known.
Knows.
Pretty exciting, you know, to have a charting record. And I was like, well, you know, I said, there's a mall right over by my hotel, Bells, and it met that criteria. I'm looking to do, you know, because like in Bakersfield.
I know it stings a little bit, but that's worth it.
But do you know how much grief she's going to take in her life?
We also know that a climate emergency is happening.
A story that doesn't, need some kind of backstory. So, but yeah.
For the first time in my life, afraid for anyone to know I was a Muslim.
You know what it is, though?
It's going to be okay. You know that.
You know what I'm saying?
Will. 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 Will.
4 days. We're not going to get a lot of takes, you know, so we'll get a couple of...
That will work on a feature film.
Okay. So I went to a site called Mandy.com.
You will be successful. You will be successful.
Who cannot or will not spend.
Sustainable harmony means now we reduce inequality.
Inevitably, one student will raise his hand.
Build it, they will come, right? They will reach out to you if they're...
And many of them will fail.
They knew what they were getting into, and that was that. And they will, if you...
There will be a handful.
Not only will the poor and vulnerable be exposed to surveillance.
Up. 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 Up.
Up.
And we'll end up here with the Bell Mountain.
Well, she ended up blowing away all of their expectations.
I woke up in a hammock 6 hours later, and other Indians look up to them.
All chipped in, they were all really excited because they know, and I ended up with...
We open ourselves up to those opportunities.
They also then set up guardhouses to
get it up here in the search result. They made sure.
But if I had done that, if I had given up
The country, if they wanted to break up with him.
And in the process, end up discovering alternatives.
And it ended up being a win for both Tracy and her employer.
One. 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 One.
Oneer.
So he walked into my room one evening.
Then he goes, about 1 in 1,000.
This isn't one of your books, sweet.
My one and only choice for college.
Well, one possibility that a lot of conservationists have raised is the first one, the most...
Based on that one small but critical observation.
That was like the one thing I had. I didn't play sports. And in one of their adventures, they went to a haunted house.
It is one piece of bleached Honduras mahogany.
age, and I want to tell you one thing...
Is made from one piece of sculpture.
Time. 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 Time.
Timed.
They start at exactly the same time of the evening.
That is not tied to a specific time or place.
It's time to stop running.
Every time it's played on the radio,
when it's time to delegate that power,
the memory of these people has blurred as time has passed.
Every time it's played in a movie.
And every time he did this, his anxiety ratcheted down a little bit.
There was a time in which
it's time for part 22 of our 50-part series.
Doc, this is the first time in 43 years.
What we find time and time again.
There.
Theirs. They're at.
Of course, there are many non-climate issues that
before there was such a thing as cinema and television.
Because there is no stigma with those, so go ahead, they're safe.
And there I was at her hospital bedside.
Very simply, you can see what's working and what's not working right there on a piece of paper.
In this meeting, there is a man standing in front of them.
The news, in a sense, there's always going to be something that occurs there. And that's this.
So the house is either all the way up there in the railway tracks.
I went there with my family on a Fulbright fellowship. He and I went camping there for 4 days.
Or is there a stigma attached?
That there was somebody in Assad's office who said, hey.
Year. 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 Yearn.
Years.
Completely disillusioned in the year 2000.
And this year we are celebrating.
About a year and a half after Mike passed away.
For all those times in our 40-year marriage.
And so the year I graduated, I had written a short film that played, and I had written
In a year to a year and a half.
But, for the first 6-7 years, he would do a movie every year. It would come out, and that was.
But over about the course of a year and a half.
This year is the centennial of his masterpiece, In Search of Lost Time.
The year after Connor's paper.
Now, I'm on 7th year, sustaining against.
I was in my final year of high school.